And I'm sorry for getting you so early in the morning. And
well, I have to thank everybody. You can hear me, can you?
yes, absolutely fine.
Good.
No problem.
I have to thank everybody for staying so late on a, well, perhaps not professor with us, but you've done this time, this special time to accommodate me, and that's very kind of you all. Thank you.
Good morning, Professor James Kippen. This is Sunila Kasuri.
Yes, I've just read all the participants. I'm very happy to be participating with such a distinguished group of people.
It's nice that in this pandemic situation, we are still meeting and
indeed.
From the warmth of our houses.
Ah, yes, indeed.
That's a new concept.
Yeah. I see the you're sharing the screen here. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, Mr. Kippen, Professor Vyas sent his greetings.
Oh,
Professor
okay.
Vidyadhar Vyas. Professor Vidyadhar.
Yes. Very nice. So, very nice. Well, it's nice to be in India again, even if it's only a virtual participation.
Actually, Professor Vyas is my husband.
Ah, okay. So now I understand. I had never met you before, but I knew of you. Yes, indeed. Yeah. Well, we last chatted back in Bombay quite some years ago now, but well, please do send in my regards.
Yeah, sure.
And Dr. Pacciolla,
yes,
I'm seeing you for the very first time.
Yes, thank you very much for participating.
No, it's a great pleasure.
So easily also.
Well, it's a great pleasure, I must say.
So, Dr. Paolo, shall we start?
Yes, for me, I think we can start. We are all here, so.
Yeah. Thank you. So, good evening, good morning to you all. This is Professor Ramesh Chandra Gaur. I'm Dean IGNCA and Head of Kalanidhi Division at IGNCA. Extend a very hearty welcome to you all in this today's program of virtual book discussion. And in today's program, we are going to virtually discuss the book entitled The Indian Drum of the King God and the Pakhavaj of Nathdwara, which is written by Dr. Paolo Pacciolla. He is basically a ethnomusicalist, musician, and currently as a Tagore National Fellow, he is in India, and he is contributing significantly in the field of Indian cultural heritage. So let me first thank you, Dr. Paolo, for bringing out such a wonderful book and also agreeing to have a discussion on this book at our platform.
I am the one who thanks. Who is very grateful to you all for participating, for you to organize and to all the participants to be here to share their thoughts and work.
Thank you, Dr. Paolo. So for today's discussion, we have a very experienced and esteemed panel, which is going to discuss about book. Let me extend my thanks and welcome all of them. So let me welcome Dr. Richard Wides, who is Emeritus Professor of Musicology and Professional Research Associate, Department of Music, School of Arts, SOAS University of London, UK. So thank you, Professor Richard, and we are honored to the program, and we look forward to hearing you in this today's book discussion.
I'm very happy to be here, and thank you again for inviting me to take part in this very interesting discussion.
Thank you, Professor Richard. We have with us Professor Dr. James Kippen. He is a Professor Emeritus, Ethnomusicology, Faculty of Music, University of Toronto, Canada. So, welcome, Professor Kippen, for agreeing to be a panelist despite of your very early morning time in Canada.
Thank you so much for organizing this very, very interesting panel on a great book. We're looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you. We have with us Professor Dr. Sunira Kasliwal. She is currently faculty at Department of Music, University of Delhi. A researcher, she has also served as a Dean, Faculty of Music and Fine Arts and Head of the Department of Music. Thank you, Professor Kasliwal, for your being on the panel and agreeing on our very request. And we welcome you and thank you for your participation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gaur, for inviting me to give my to say something about the subject. And I thank you for that, and Mr. Joshi.
We have specially invited Pandit Dalchand Sharma, an artist who is a Pakhavaj exponent of Nathdwara Gharana. He's working with Department of Music, University of Delhi. So on the request, our request, he is here to share some of his thoughts during the program. So thank you, Pandit Dalchand Sharma ji, for your kind presence.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आपका.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our member secretary, thank you, Dalchand ji. Our member secretary, Sachidanand Joshi, was supposed to chair this discussion, but due to some other engagement, he will not able to join. So I will take care of all those issues and formalities. So basically, like we have some eminent panel from abroad. Just few words about this organization, Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts. Is a premier research and academic institute in the field of art and culture. It's responsible for preservation, promotion, and propagation of Indian cultural heritage through various programs. We have various divisions, Kalanidhi, which is a cultural resource center. We have Kalakosh, which do research on textual. Janpad Sampada division, basically on lifestyle, tribal issues and other issues concerning intangible cultural heritage. And we organize several kind of programs. The Kalanidhi, which is organizing this today program, which I am heading, is having about 300,000 of manuscripts on different aspects of Indian cultural and knowledge system. We have a print reference library, which is having about 250,000 books. The space of the library is the personal collection of eminent scholars, about 25. Then we have cultural archive, which is having varied kind of photographs, music, and sculpture. About 45 personal collection of eminent scholar in our cultural archive. We have visuals, more than 100,000, all digitized, available in both digital and print format, visual format, in form of slides. So with this great collection, our reference library organize every month a discussion on various books, sometimes 2 books, sometimes 3 books, sometimes 1 book. So in that series, today we have organized this program, virtual book discussion on the Indian drum of the King God and the Pakhavaj of Nathdwara. And besides IGNC as a dean responsible for about all academic programs and research, 9 PG diploma courses and about 5 certificate courses. I do represent India in UNESCO in Memory of the World program and also indigenous languages. And with these activities and program, IGNC is contributing very significantly to the worldwide research community in providing resources, providing various kind of publications. We have more than 1,000 publications published so far on different aspects of Indian cultural tradition and different form of arts. So with these words of introduction, I once again welcome all our panelists. And as per the structure of the program, let me first invite the author of the book, that who can be the better than author himself to introduce the books to panel and also to the audience. So now it's over to Paolo. Please start here.
Okay. Again, I will start again thanking all of you. I'm just seeing also Pandita Sharma. I'm very glad that he is here also participating, since he is also a protagonist of the book. I'm very, very happy that he is here also with all of us.
Thank you.
So I can say that maybe I'm not the right one to introduce the book, in the sense that I've written everything. And at this point of my research, I'm looking to something that is on the way of this, that is rooted in that book, since my research in Kerala is continuing the research that started from there. It stems actually from that book. And since the book itself is a kind of history of a process, it is quite difficult also to synthesize it in very few words. And since you are there, and I have such eminent scholars and people who has also inspired my work with their works. So instead of speaking of the book, I would add something to it, to say something more. I mean, instead of, again, telling something of the book, which you have already read, I would add something that it was not possible to do it for publication reasons. I mean, a section of my research was devoted to iconography of music. And the editor, the publisher, had a limit in the images. So, and of course, and since the research on images has been very important also, I would like to share with you a few images and not take too much of time, because I'm also, I would like to know your opinion also, to listen to your words, and even maybe if there is a space for interactions also, if there is something to discuss. So I'm trying to share the screen to show. Is it working?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so I will start with Gajalakshmi, which is in fact another, according to me, the Pakhavaj itself, Mridanga itself, is another representation and the synthesis of the heritage and of the drum itself. And it has been very useful for me also as a kind of meditation tool to understand the Pakhavaj and the Mridanga, mostly the ancient Mridanga. So these are different iconographies which I speak in the texts. But so what I would like to start to share now is the process through images, is the process of the changing, the evolution of the body of the drum, which is one of the aspects of this continuous evolution. So the first images, this one is from Udaigiri caves, and 2nd century BCE. And the drums, here we have the first version of the Mridanga, the most ancient, that is in a set of 2 or 3 drums. Here we can see quite clearly 2, and again in association with dance. So this is, as far as I know, the most ancient image. The only few of the pictures just to go through the evolution of the drum I've collected here. So this is again another images. This is from Barut, almost the same period. And here we can see also leather straps. Again, another representation here in the detail, 3 drums. This is quite clear. And again, straps can be seen. Again, in dance. And here we are at Aurangabad. Again, dancing. Although the size of the set changes, of the drums changes, we can see that there is a format. There is a common pattern, which I put here just to make it clearer and all together. We can see that even from different perspectives, this is from high perspectives here, is usually it is the drum the set was composed by 2 or 3 drums. It was called usually 3, it was called tripushkara. So we can see from different angles, and here also in paintings. And the study I've done, it's synthesized here in these images, which shows the distribution of this kind of instrument in the subcontinent. And this is an image which synthesizes, in particular, this version, which was used in court scenes, because all these images belongs to dance scenes, so they were performed in courts. This is one of the most beautiful, I think, and also clear image of courts, and also full of that shows the presence of the importance of auspiciousness due to the presence of women, so much of courtesans. The other, this is what I also argue in the text, is that this set of drum was associated both to court and to Nataraja, Shiva Nataraja, to the dance of Shiva. Here, again, a few images showing this is from South, and here again, we are in Rajasthan. And we can see that the shape of the instrument, of the set, is quite clearly continuously going through the ages. And here again, this map, which synthesizes the consistency of the shape of the drums in all over India and in time. And up to while the court scenes, we have a representation of court scenes up to the 8th century CE. Nataraja is depicted the drums, the set of drums accompanying the dance of Nataraja reaches also the 13th century, 13th, even 14th century, mostly in Rajasthan. The latest representations are in Rajasthan. So when we arrive at the end, around the end, from the 8th century onwards, apart from the representation of the set of Mridanga associated with Nataraja, this set becomes obsolete and disappears from representations, and also it is not more mentioned in texts, apart from being part of the past history. And we find in this period innumerable representations of drums, but these times the set disappears completely, and we have a number of various barrel drums appearing in this period that, according to texts, are here. I'm just going through some of them. We can see that they are different, although the shape looks similar, but some are cylindrical, some others are barrel shaped. The dimensions of the measures of the drums are different, and even the leather straps are different. Here again, an image just synthesizing. So here in this period, that lasts a few centuries, from the 8th to the 16th almost century, we have innumerable drums, various drums in different forms, barrel drums, being mentioned often as mridanga, but mardala or muraj, but they are in fact only one instrument, one barrel drum, having different features, which are in contrast with the previous set, which cannot be identified with a single instrument, according to me, and according also to the descriptions provided by text, because I've done also comparison between images and texts. So we start having the first representation of Pakhavaj, and this drum is also recognized as identified with the mridanga in the Nartana Nirnayam. In the 16th century, 17th century, we can say also, with a certain degree of correspondence with the present day instrument. And in this picture, I think it's the most clear one, since it clearly shows the presence of the atta and the CI on the other side, and the instrument appears just like it is today. It is not clear whether there are 3 skins, but then the Nartana Nirnaya provides this evidence. So, and this is, of course, present day Pakhavaj. I've gone through these images quite quickly because, as I said before, I would like to leave more space to you all other participants, in case to necessary to clarify some aspects or to discuss of some points in the text. But it was my pleasure to also share some of these. The images I've collected are really a lot, really a lot, more than various hundreds. But this is a very, very synthesis of them. So I would leave word the next with pleasure.
Thank you, Dr. Paolo, for giving glimpses of your work. And it is very interesting to see the images and the various stages of development you have narrated in your introduction. And I'm sure if these glimpses are so interesting, how the book is going to be, I'm sure people will be very curious to read this book. So thank you very much. And this program is also live on Facebook, live of IGNCA, through that several individual pages. And also we have about 30 plus participants who are with us online. And I welcome them on Zoom, and also welcome all the participants who are currently with us on Facebook Live. So thank you, Dr. Paolo. So let's move ahead with our program. And now I would like to invite Professor Dr. James Kippen, Professor Emeritus, Ethnomusicologist, Faculty of Music, University of Toronto. So Professor Kippen, now it's over to you for your views and
thank you, Dean Gore. Thank you to the other very distinguished participants. Thank you to Panditji, Aapse milkar bari khushi hui. And thank you, Paolo, for a lovely little presentation with marvelous imagery. I should preface this by saying that back in the 1990s, I'd written 3 chapters of a book on Pakhavaj, hoping to do what you've actually just achieved. And it was back in the day when computers crashed and people lost their files, and I lost all my data, and I never returned to it. So I'm very pleased that you persisted and have written a marvelous book on Pakhavaj, on Mridang, and I congratulate you because I've thoroughly enjoyed reading your book. I saw 2.5 years ago 3 or 4 chapters of your book, which were sent to me by the publisher for my opinion, and I was very keen to see this work published. I did at the time make some comments about things that I thought needed to be addressed, and either you addressed them or they were in parts of the book that I had never seen before, in chapters that perhaps were not sent to me. But when I read this book, I was really truly fascinated by the multi-layered and very nuanced picture that you painted, that I think, first of all, creates a very persuasive trajectory for the development of the modern Pakhavaj from its ancient roots in the Mridang. I think that this is perhaps one of the most significant contributions of the book. And at the same time, I think you've given us a very deep and also very nuanced image of the ideational Pakhavaj or Mridang, the sometimes mythological, sometimes very real, but always, I think, in conversation with each other. There is a world of Pakhavaj which I think is symbolic as well as very practical. And I think you capture that in the very, very interesting discussions you have about its meaning over time. And I think you've done a really wonderful job. I'm someone who's particularly interested in the modern period, by which I really mean the 18th and 19th centuries. And when I read your book, I still had many questions, mostly relating to that particular period, because I think in some ways it's less covered in your writing than I think the earlier periods, which I found fascinating and about which I know less. And first, I had some questions for you that I thought you might elaborate on in order to offer some further insights into your thinking and your research. And the first question was, if we go by the very, very large number of artistic representations of women playing Pakhavaj, especially in the 17th, but particularly 18th century, how does this affect your argument for the empowering masculinity of the drum?
In fact, images, female musicians are much more than drummers, male drummers. And while often male drummers are also, I don't think the association, the argument of masculinity, I think it is not changed by the presence of women, in the sense, from the symbolical point of view. I mean, because we have to think of this period as a period, all history as a period where symbolism is very important. So from a symbolical point of view, the presence, it is a male instrument, also because of its sound, its powerful sound. And while at the same time, it's used in various ways. it is depicted not only played, it is played also by, for instance, six in context of six. So it is an instrument, since it was what I think in synthesis, that it was accepted by Mughal in the Mughal court, and it became a symbol of this male masculinity, warriors also, Mughal warriors. But since courts, the Mughal court was so crucial, it spread the importance of the instrument, and the instrument itself spread all over the empire. And it was then used in various ways, and also accepted in various ways. Also, this is what explains also the different, because if we go in Orissa, we have also the Mardala, the Eval Mardala, the Mardala, which is played in the Odissi dance. It's a very similar instrument, but at the same time it's different, particularly the bass sound side, or the presence of the CI. So I think that the main content of and symbolical content of the instrument was associated to this, to the Mughal nobility and warriors, and so to masculinity. But since it was so important, it spread like anything from the central of the empire. So it was accepted and taken in different ways. Of course, also in women side of the course, no? So, and it was adopted in a different way. This is what I think. Sure. But then all over time, again, it changed, and this the most important aspect also lose its strength. And then this is what I try also to explain in the text. That is a continuous process that it is made out in kind of curves. So it has it goes in one way and then changes again. Then it is absorbed in a new way, and then it moves like this. It's a continuous flow.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So, of course, I mean, as you point out too, and as we've always noticed, women disappeared through the course of the 19th century from playing instruments in general, I think. Whereas, of course, earlier women are playing all kinds of instruments pretty much all the time. So their disappearance, is that due to an argument that you make for masculinity, or is it for some other reason?
I think it's mostly for this. Not only here we have to see also the coming into the play of the English, the Britishers. Yeah. So, and with their contribution, that is, I think, very strong, and contributes to strengthening also the masculine masculine aspect. But at the same time, also, it's again a question of it's a decline that comes also like a flowers, and then once it has completed its flourishing, it starts. So it's something like this. So it was it spread like this and then lost its strength. It's a mixture of aspects, I think. They are intertwined and overlapping.
Yeah, I thank you. I have read and translated some chapters from an 1869 text called the Sarmaya-e-Ishrat. And it's a very interesting chapter, which is informed fully by two musicians, both Muslims, both Dharis, both Pakhavaj players, who also played tabla. And again, this is something that I had noted before. When one looks at the lists of players that are mentioned by Imam, Karam Imam, in the 1860s as well. When one looks at other texts, one sees lists and lists of Pakhavaj players who were Muslim Dharis. And I'm wondering if there's still, of course, they too have largely disappeared over time, especially over the course of the 20th century. And I'm wondering if there's still a chapter to be written on them.
I can say that I have no, according to the sources I found, I could not tell anything about it. But of course, if sources are there, it would be interesting to point out clearly what might have been the Muslim contribution to it. Although,
so
theoretically, I think that is what I argue in the book is that the instrument is mostly associated with the Hindu concept of.
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, I do understand that too, but I don't think it necessarily excluded Muslims from playing it. And
Absolutely.
I mean, from a long time back, there's a steady stream of them that do it. What before the as you say, incomprehensible Mridang Sagar by Ghanshyam Das. What other sources before that were you aware of? That was about 1911, wasn't it?
But are you speaking on Nathdwara Gharana or in general?
Yes, I'm speaking about the book on Pakhavaj by Ghanshyam Das.
I found only a copy, a printed photocopy.
Right.
Then I met Mr. Prakash Kumavat, and he showed me the original.
Oh, I see, right. But before this, did you have access to other sources?
No.
Okay, so I should tell you about the Mridang Manjari, and this was written in 1873 by Raja Sir Shorendra Mohan Thakur.
Okay, this is new, yes.
And I've mentioned it in my other writings before.
Yes.
It runs to close to 200 pages. And I've just finished a translation from the Bengali of this. And it's a very interesting text. One of the most interesting things about it, I think, is that it is informed by a man called Kshetra Mohan Goswami, or Ketra Mohan, if you want to go by the Bengali pronunciation. And Ketra Mohan Goswami was from the Bishnupur Gharana. He sang, he played many different instruments. He certainly played Pakhavaj. And, but also the other people that contribute repertoire to this book are Bengali Bhadralok, nobles, effectively. And also there are many Hindu and many Muslim Pakhavaj players as well. And it seems that it was an instrument that really did populate Calcutta in those early days of the British Raj, and was symbolically very important too. So this is something perhaps that I can share with you in future. And I think you'd be in a good position to make some more general sense of it, since you have so much else going on in terms of the context for the Mridang or Pakhavaj. So the point is, I think that there are some interesting sources out there that are yet to be discovered. And I look forward to hopefully sharing some of those things with you. In the same vein, why do you think it is that there are so few texts on Pakhavaj in comparison with the texts that we've received on tabla?
So something that you are highlighting also, it's relating to the Mridanga Manjari. I knew it, I have a copy, but I do not know Bengali, so I did not have access to the text. Relating to the last question, I think there may be also texts like that still have to be discover. It might be. And at the same time, what I think is that also this instrument, again, it was particularly associated. They might have been 17th century. I think that we should, if we could have a text of the 16th, 17th century, that would be extremely useful for the understanding, because after that, it's tabla gained success, and so they overshadow also the Pakhavaj so slowly. So I think it's, and also because this for the aura that is associated to this instrument.
Okay, yeah. One last question, because I don't want to take up too much time, and I want to let other people speak. But you write of the stuti parans, bol parans, you write of images and these sorts of things. Do you have any sense how old these may be, what the origins of these may be?
I think they are the stuti parans. Stuti parans only you are speaking, or?
Yeah, well, okay, just about those anyway.
I think, so I've done a parallel research while I was writing this book, and I found that there are similar compositions even in Orissa and also in northern India and in South India, of course, almost all over. They are associated with dance. And these kind of compositions are maybe quite old. I mean, second millennium, but it's not precise. I cannot say precisely how old they are, but surely they are quite old. Of course, I cannot say anything about any specific composition. This is, I cannot say. Only for my experience with Ramkishore Das, he used to tell me this is composition by this man. Otherwise, he had no words about it. We can ask Pandit Darshan Sharma if he knows something more about recent compositions. But anyway, I'm sure that this kind of bol paran, something like this, studi paran are associated to, and this I can share with you later with this.
Yeah, I mean, I know. I have hundreds and hundreds of these things and very many different versions of the, even the same stuti paran. My general impression, however, is that these things probably are old, but that they have exploded in popularity through the 20th century.
Absolutely. No. Sorry to interrupt you. I'm saying the same thing. It's relating to the. I think that they are also associated with nationalism and with the fortune in this sense. So they are recently, then they got fortune in 20th century. But I was telling that there are some compositions which have found some sources, and it seems that they are centuries old. But I do not have a precise, only short pieces from these compositions coming from Orissa in particular, but they were associated with dance, not only, but they were not simply drum compositions.
No, although I think that does make sense.
This is what I think. Although, but this is quite complicated to explain in short time. I think that there is a kind of thread that connects Natya Shastra with this kind of compositions.
Yeah.
But I will, with this we can share in.
Oh, sure. Yes, definitely. Be happy to do that. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I'm very happy now to hear others what they have to say.
Thank you, Dr. Kippen, for raising very interesting and pertinent questions. I'm sure Paolo was comfortable with all of them. And see, one of the interesting observation you made regarding the literature on Pakhavas as compared to another field like tabla and all this. That's I'm also a little surprised. And with the vast knowledge you possess, you have quoted number of references. I'll be really interested in having list of references, which we might like to keep it in our resource centers. Like people should know about all these valuable resources. One of them, you mentioned that very historical document. So I would like to locate and
yes.
the Madan Manjari. So we would like to keep it or procure a copy of that for our resource center.
Mr. God, Sarmaya, Ishrat else also.
Okay.
Sarmaya, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Sarmaya.
So,
this is a first edition of the Mridang Manjari.
Oh,
and it's falling apart, but anyway, it's here. So yeah. Anyway,
thank you.
It's done now, so I'm happy to share it.
Thank you very much. So let's move to our next speaker, Professor Dr. Richard Vidis, Emeritus Professor of Musicology and Professional Research Associate, Department of Music, School of Art, SOAS University of London, UK. Dr. Richard, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Gore, and again, thank you for inviting me to take part in this very, very interesting discussion. I first met Paolo Pacciolla sitting across a table in the University of Durham, where he was defending his PhD thesis. And I and the internal examiner, it was our job to grill him about what he had written. And we did so for a very couple of hours or more, discussing all the many fascinating aspects of this work, which embraces so many different aspects. And I think in our report at the end of the process, we said something to the effect that we very much hoped that he would publish this thesis in a suitable form. And so I'm absolutely delighted that that has come to fruition. I know from experience that if you don't publish your PhD within 3 or 4 years, let's say, then it never comes out, or you get interested in other things and they take over, and the thesis may never see the light of day. So now the world can read Paolo's work, and that's wonderful. And as Professor Kippen mentioned, that there are new things in the book and things that have been revised or updated or modified from the thesis version. And so, yeah, it's an even more impressive piece of writing than was the thesis. But in his work, it seems to me that Paolo has, on the one hand, he's not written a conventional music ethnography, which would be, an account of a tradition as it is today, written from first experience and detailed interviews with musicians and so forth. Paolo has done all that, but in his work, he has pushed the boundaries of investigation way back into the historical dimension. And in order to understand the present through the past, and to some extent, perhaps the past through the present, in doing so, I think he has very successfully avoided two possible pitfalls with this kind of research, one of which is to assume a direct and unbroken continuity between the centuries BC and the present day, which of course is a very tempting and seductive line to take. On the other hand, he's also avoided the view that Indian classical music was invented sometime around 1870 and is an inherently modern phenomenon, which some ethnomusicologists might wish to argue. But of course, the reality is something between those two extremes, and it's a complex reality involving all sorts of continuities and continuities. And so I think that Paolo has negotiated this terrain very successfully, not ignoring the richness of the archaeological record and the textual record and the artistic record, bringing all those things into the discussion. And so avoiding another pitfall, which might have been to look only at texts or only at iconography. Of course, these things complement each other and have to be integrated into a approach such as this. He's also, I think, avoided another pair of pitfalls, one of which would be with this particular instrument, I think, would be to see it as a purely ritual or sacred instrument, an instrument associated purely with temple performance and so on, or on the other hand, as purely a court music, a classical music instrument, or because the instrument has many roles. It has an important dance role as well as accompaniment role and a soloistic role, a ritual role and an entertainment role. All these things are part and parcel of the tradition of Pakhavaj. Remember very vividly in my first visit to India in 1975 to 6, attending the second Banaras Drupad Mela. The first one had been held the year before. And up to that point, I'd been in India for several months, and I had found it enormously difficult to find any way into the subject of Drupad, which I was interested in, or Pakhavaj, which of course is part of that subject. And then, to my astonishment, for 3 or 4 days, every night, there were continuous performances of both vocal Drupad, but also, this was something entirely new to me, one after another, lengthy Pakhavaj solos played by extraordinary virtuoso performers. I think they included at least one of Paolo's first teachers of the Pakhavaj. So this was a revelation to me, and it kind of underlined the fact that Drupad and Pakhavaj are a kind of musical subculture which is there, has always been there, but you need to know how to get into it, where the entrances are, and then you discover a remarkable richness. Clearly, the temple tradition of Nathdwara is another way in to the Pakhavaj tradition. So it's very important that Paolo has explored that particular scene. But I wonder, Paolo, whether you have any thoughts about this. It's always surprised me, and reading your book, it surprises me all the more that Drupad and Pakhavaj still have this, you could think of it as a marginalized state or as a subculture, a very special, a niche area of Hindustani music. And yet it has all the sort of prestige and, as you show, the connections, the symbolic connections with India's glorious past, going right back into antiquity. You would think that it would have more presence in the public sphere, particularly in an era of nationalist politics since the beginning of the 20th century. And yet the dominant forms of Hindustani music are still khayal, tabla, sitar, sarod, and so on. So do you have a sense of, is it maybe because performers themselves are not concerned to seek the public limelight, or what, or because we know in the past they tended to be somewhat secretive about certainly teaching instruments like the bean. Don't know whether this applies to Pakhavaj also, that there was an element of secrecy about it. Do you have a sense of this, what has happened to Pakhavaj as part of the Drupad tradition in the 19th and 20th centuries?
What I think is that as the Pakhavaj as well as Drupad as a form, in the Pakhavaj, and both for their sound, they could be very well accepted because they are very powerful in themselves. Some kind of experiments have been done also, for instance, if I'm getting your question properly, some experiments have been done to recollocate the sound of Pakhavaj, for instance, in a different context. And again, with Drupad, there are masters, gurus who are trying mixing some way. The form in itself, in the tradition, to the line of the tradition, Pandit Darshan Sharma is certainly one who is keeping this tradition alive, but at the same time giving some fresh approach because of his, I think, aesthetic capacity and is very much nuanced. So he is able to produce a vast array of sounds. So this, and he's also able to discuss with people, to introduce the instruments, even in contexts like Drupad Mela, but also in other contexts in Delhi itself. So if the Pakhavaj, remaining just a moment to the Pakhavaj itself, if the instrument is presented just like it is in the tradition as it has arrived to this point, with this masculine and vir rasa so proudly and so forcefully also expressed, I think that the instrument loses its beauty, parts of its beauty. That is just one section, one color of the instrument, which is very rich. So, and of course, also the audience will get this kind of lost. And something which I think that is, but he and also some other Pakhavaj players is trying to write, to compose new repertoires. But I think this is one aspect, and they of course have to face, in any case, the contemporary India, which is not at all, it seems to me, interested in classical music in general. Even khayal is not so much strong now. So there are any other, what they call fusion, that is so negatively addressed in India. It is not always so, because there are also nice musicians who are trying to create something new. That is not bad. The problem, I don't think it's only secrecy. I think that the problem of Drupad in general is that it's a closed society. That is not only that they are like we say in ivory towers. Is it so that we say in English also? They are too proud of their tradition, and they highlight too much their status. And in this way, maybe they are, not everybody, of course, not all of them, but in this way, they lose the contact with the present time. It's not only a question of secrecy. Something is there, of course, because they don't want, not everybody is ready to share what he or she knows. This is sure. I've also a personal experience about this aspect. But I think that they should open as a society. Even in Drupad Mela, if you go there, you see that they are very too much connected and too reverted into themselves as a group rather than to the others. So I think this is something that is goes against not the form in itself. Although, for instance, we can see that Dagar style is much more well accepted than other styles, which are more aggressive, maybe, although they are interesting, but also because Drupad, Dagar Bani performers, they have had, again, I come to the point, they have been able to present the form in the proper way to a contemporary audience, and also to Western audience. That is very much important, I think, for all of them, because the audience, I think, is wider in West than in India or. So I think they have been able to produce. But if we see in the history, this is a very important aspect in every art. So it is upon to musicians, in this particular case, musicians, to present their own art in the proper way for the proper context and to the contemporary audience. This is what I think. So I was enchanted by Drupad and Drupad music and Drupad Pakhavaj. But of course, it was because of I think that sound has driven me to also all this research. It was something else. But for someone who is mostly interested in, it has to be conveyed in a different way. This is what I think. I don't know whether I applied properly to your questions or if you had some other aspects.
I think that's a very fair answer. As usual, you see various different aspects to this. It's not a case of one single factor. I would only add that, of course, it's very common and very natural for a group of people of whatever kind, whether artists or something else, if they feel that they are in a minority, they become more inward looking. And of course, they hang on to their tradition the more.
I think, sorry, just one thing.
If they feel threatened as a minority. So it's a kind of self-compounding situation, perhaps.
But sorry to interrupt you. But what I think also in the context of Drupad is that the status of Drupad works against its diffusion from the point of view of musicians, because they are too proud of it, and so they are not ready to go towards people. This is what I think may be also. Your argument, I agree, I mean, that's an aspect. But I think that there is also, at least it was my feeling there. And of course, it is not of all Drupal representative. But I think that the status of Drupal, the fact that Drupal is the most ancient musical form of the northern India, and it has this continuity that's been living for so many centuries, and they are representative of these particular traditions. Of course, it is exceptional. It's something to be proud of. But I think the excess of pride can be something that produces, again, that you don't find anyone at the same level, and you feel too gross yourself.
Well, this is a universal problem, isn't it? Yes, yes. But compounded when people feel threatened by being in a minority, it all plays its. Well, thank you for that very interesting comment. I don't really have any other questions for you. I like very much what you say at one point in the book about the Pakhavaj being more than a musical instrument. Although I would question whether that is in fact really anything very special. Musical instruments all over the world, and not only musical instruments, but other kinds of physical artifact often do take on characteristics that go beyond their materiality, shall we say. Just yesterday, I was listening to a lecture by a colleague on Jewish Torah scrolls, which are venerated by their communities, that they are in fact treated as persons. They are not things, they are persons. And if a scroll is no longer fit for use, it can be buried in a graveyard as though it were a person, and so on. So this idea of the significance of a material object far exceeding its simple materiality is I think a very widespread phenomenon. Clearly that with musical instruments there are special aspects to this, and
I may add also about, for instance, I have to say that you said before just that it's good to publish soon after doing because then you take the other interest, and it is also like this for me presently, because I'm conducting research in Kerala on drumming.
Yeah.
But I'm saying because, for instance, in Kerala in general, there are drums for several communities. Drums are like sacred instruments representing the deity. But I was thinking, when you just said about what you said about the Torah, it's exactly what they do for the icon in tantric Brahmanical temples. The icon, it's just given proper funeral like a Brahmin, not as any simple man, like a Brahmin. And in a similar way, the miravu, which is the drum which is played in Kudiyattam, that is a Sanskrit theater, one of the most ancient theatrical forms still practiced. The miravu receives ornaments like a Brahmin, And when, if suppose it gets broken, the body of the drum, it is buried also, like a Brahmin. So something similar is also there. And in the same way, the most important instrument that is played in the most sacred and sacred, also ritual, always in Brahmanical temples, it's called maram. This maram has to the mridang. Even the miravu, which is a vase, like a vase, that is called, one of its names is mridanga. They call it, musicians call him also, old generation musicians call it also mridanga. And while this drum, the maram, which is played in temples for the most sacred, it is a kind of, the skins are almost identical to mridangam Pakhavaj. So it is exactly the same kind of instrument, and it is considered as the most sacred one. And they also treat it like the miravu. I mean, it's a very much respected instrument, and also even in this instrument we can I find symbolical associations with the deities. So it's I think that it would be interesting. This is also something which I'm searching, the connection with the mridang. When this maram has been introduced in temples with this shape, because in the context of the Brahmanical context is the same, but the shape is the same. So, and also the symbolical associations are almost identical. So it would be interesting when it has been absorbed, because it is connected again on what I was saying before, that from center of Mughal court, then it spread all over India. And Mughals also were supportive also of Vaishnava cults. My connection maybe is. Can you hear me?
You're breaking up a little bit, but we can still hear you.
Yes, it was everything. So just to add on your comment, what indeed was very pertinent and interesting.
Yeah, yes, of course. One thing that musical instruments have that is, in a sense, almost human, is a voice. They produce sound. The sound emerges mysteriously from a cavity that you can't see. And so I think this perhaps is one reason why musical instruments are particularly endowed with person-like attributes. In Nepal, where I've done a lot of research in recent years, the god of music and dance is Nasadyo, who is Natya Deva, and he is believed to reside in instruments. So the sound of the instruments is the sound of Natya Deva emerging. So yeah, this is, I think, a very widespread and fascinating phenomenon. So thank you for those comments, and yeah, thank you again for the book. And I'm very eager to hear what our Indian colleagues have to say on these matters. So perhaps I could hand back to Professor Gar. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Richard, for very interesting views, your experiences, and raising pertinent questions, and also giving a lot of valuable information. It was very nice to listen to you. I'm sure all participants must have enjoyed your wonderful narration about And I fully agree with you that Pakhavaj is not just a musical instrument; it is more than that. And it is connected with not just music but various form of dance, Kathak, Odissi, and uh, all kind of like, wide across India with so much diversity. But it is connected with different regions and having number of connections. So thank you very much. And now I would like to invite Dr. Sunira Kasliwal, who is an artist, teacher, and researcher in the field, currently with Delhi University, have served various positions in music department and faculty of music in Delhi University. So over to Professor Kasliwal. Please unmute yourself. Professor Kasliwal, please unmute yourself.
Hi. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, please. Now go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah. Namaskar and very good evening to all of you. And Mr. Kipun, very good morning to you. And I'm thankful to the IGNCA to invite me to share my thoughts on this uh, very profound subject. And for that, I'm thankful to Mr. Joshi and Mr. Gaur. Mr. Gaur, who is the Dean and Head of Kalanidhi. And I'm very thankful to Mr. for providing me a photocopy of the book. This is a wonderful book. The Indian Drum of the King God and the Pakhavaj of Nathdwara by Paolo Pacciolla. Excuse me if I am not pronouncing the surname properly. Mr. Paola, first of all, I must congratulate you on on reading your book. I have come through so many things which I have not known earlier. And the other thing is that to know about the instrument, which is so near to us, that sometimes we don't see through it. So many concepts, so many things about, and you are showing me for showing those aspects through your book. Thank you very much for that. It's a wonderful task you have done, and it's a very interesting and informative book. Deva, in his book Musical Instruments, attributes the origin of bifacial drum to Indian soil. And I think he's right in this, because we find bifacial drums in all over India in abundance in classical, regional, folk, and tribal traditions. Scholars have described these three basic characters of Indian drums, uh, which are presently in all the which are in the Pakhavaj also. Firstly, the use of multiple layers or the membranes. Secondly, the use of some kind of device to tune them, because tuning is very important for us. And the thirdly, the the material like syahi used for the used to give it a nice tone. So the syahi makes the sound deeper and resonating. Both northern and southern mridang possesses these three features. Pakhavaj and mridangam are the developed forms of the same ancient instrument named mridanga and tripushkar, as Mr. Paula has shown us with the photographs. While dealing with the subject, the author dealt in length, describing and in a sort establishing that the instrument Pakhavaj is considered auspicious. For us Indians, it is something which we take it for granted. I mean, for us, all the musical instruments are auspicious. Like Mr. Vidis has told us that we think that the Lord Shiva resides in the musical instrument. But I think for first of all, because Veena is with Saraswati, and there is a story also about the Saraswati that she resides in all the instruments because she resides in the wood, in the tree, and the instruments are made of out of wood. So that is why all the musical instruments are precious, auspicious to us. But the way the author with it is very interesting. Here I would like to quote Sangeet Parijat, which calls the mridang Kalyankari or Mangal Vadya, and says that because all the deities reside into it, it is auspicious. Before Ahobal, the writer of Sangeet Parijat, Charangdev speaks about the Ektantri Veena in this manner. He also called the Ektantri Veena Sarva Mangala or Mangalkari. Nowadays we call Shehnai a Mangal Vadya. And this is not written anywhere about Shehnai, but we find that everywhere when we start with something, we have a Shehnai recital, and it is considered very auspicious. I have to point out on a few points. First of all, first is that when we see the various texts, we found that in Natya Shastra, Mridang is a very important instrument along with Panav and Dardur. But by the time of Sangeet Ratnakar, Patar becomes a more important instrument than Mridang. Patar is described of two kinds, Margi and Desi. And it is also explained by Kalninath that Patar is the modern dholak. So the Patar becomes more important than the Mridang. And in Nakar, the Mridang is called Mardal. However, the Mardal is the Mridang only because the way it is described and the mnemonics and the shape it describes, it seems that the Mardal is a variant of Mridang only. And it is not a primary instrument in his time. But again, in Sangeet Parijat, Mridang becomes the important instrument because Sangeet Parijat, Mridang is described in as a primary percussion instrument, and Patah gets only a brief description, and in 2 lines. However, although these 2 lines are very important because it gives the impression that the Patah with thin skin, Uddali, is accompanied with vocal music. So we get a chronological historical evidence of the instrument, which is in continuation, and I think that all are agreeable on this point, and Mr. Paolo is also agreeable on this point. Is that true? Mr. Paolo?
Yes, I'm just starting again the video. I'm having problem with connection. So it was coming and going. Can you, I cannot reply because I could not follow properly. I was just going to tell you.
Okay,
I cannot
because your book says that you agree that it is the continuation, and with your pictures you have shown us in the beginning, you are agreeable that the tradition is in continuation. The second point is regarding the term Pakhavaj. In Parijat, which is a text written in later 17th century, and where Mridang is described, he has not mentioned the word Pakhavaj. But in your book, you are giving an impression that the Pakhavaj word, the term Pakhavaj, has come at the time of Akbar, whereas the Sangeet Parijat is written in the late 17th century and in the time of Shah Jahan. Shah is in the time of, I think, Jahangir. So how come that Ahobal has not given the name Pakhavat into it? I am not sure whether the term Pakhavat has come into being till then, because Ahobal is considered the main is supporting the northern Indian music, and if Pakhavat's term was there at that time, he might have uh, given it in his book. But I am agreeable with the author that Pakhavaj is a vernacular term that must have been given after its association with Vallabh Sampradaya, and it is of Brij Bhasha, because we get a few other words like Avuj, Addavuj, or Avaj, which are all the derivatives of Vadya, Baj, or Baja, in my opinion. If you can light on that, Mr. Paolo.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
My line is not coming, comes and going. So I think for what I heard, you were asking about the emergence of the name of Pakhavaj, the attribution of Pakhavaj.
Yes.
It is written in the Nartana Nirmaya, where it is, yes, there the Pakhavaj is equated to the Mridang. But in any case, I think that the name have gone, both the names have been used and still are used in a similar way. Even if I'm not wrong, the book of Bagalis, he speaks of Mridang, of Pakhavaj as Mridang. And even in a recording of himself, it is, yes, the track of solo, Pakhavaj is solo Mridang. So the two words the two names are interchangeable, have been used.
They are synonym. They are synonym.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, that's true. So my third point is regarding the patas or the bowl. So Sharangdev gives 16 patakshar, but Parijat talks about 20 pataksharas. Nowadays, as told to me by Dalchandji, 11 or 12 pataksharas are there. So in Parijat, there are a few Vadya Prabandhas which uses the bowls which are used in southern Indian mridangam playing, like Kundiruku, Thaririku, Kundukuku, Kundukit. So nowadays, these Vadya Prabandhas are not used in Pakhavat. This description gives us an idea that Parijat Karta or the Parijat writer, either knowing the Vadya Prabandhas of Mridangam of South, or till then, that is 17th century, the southern and northern variants of Mridangam were not came into being. It's a later happening. So can you throw some light on that also? Or Mr. Dalchandji can say us something about that. दालचंद जी आप बता सकते हैं कि ये जो मैंने अभी वाद्य प्रबंध पढ़े हैं, क्या ऐसे वाद्य प्रबंध अभी पखावज में आप लोग बजाते हैं, या कहाँ किस जगह के वाद्य में बजते हैं, लाइक कुंदी रिकू, थरी रिकू, कुंदु कुकू, कुंदु किट एक्सेट्रा?
देखिए ऐसा है, परिवर्तन जो है सृष्टि का नियम है। अब जैसे जैसे हम जिस जमाने में रहते हैं उस जमाने के अनुसार बहुत सी चीजें जो होती हैं उस टाइम पे रहती हैं, पर आगे हम जैसे आगे बढ़ते हैं तो उसको देखते हुए जरूरत पड़ती है थोड़ा कम कर लेते हैं, और कुछ अगर ज्यादा है तो कुछ ज्यादा बढ़ा लेते हैं। तो ये जमाने का वो है, उस टाइम पे ऐसे वर्ड थे, कुछ तो हमें मिलते हैं। अभी आज जो संगीत है, आज जो संगीत हो रहा है, क्या आप निश्चित कह सकते हैं कि वो संगीत रचना करते हैं या आपके क्या कहते हैं भरतनाट्य शास्त्र से हैं? हाँ, मूल सिद्धांत वो जरूर है, लेकिन परिवर्तन तो हुआ है। और परिवर्तन आज हम देखते हैं कि वो नाट्य शास्त्र में जो वर्णित संगीत है उसी को हम 14वीं 15वीं 16वीं शताब्दी में देखते हैं तो टोटली चेंज हो जाता है। आज जो संगीत हमारा है, आज जो है वो काफी हद तक अकबर काल से मिलता है। आपने एक बात जरा मुझे समझ नहीं पाया, इंग्लिश उतनी मेरी अच्छी नहीं है। शास्त्रीय जो नाम है वो है मृदंग, शास्त्रीय शब्दावली है मृदंग। और फोक, हाँ, और हम लौकिक में उसको पखावज कहते हैं। और ये पखावज नाम कब आया ये बात है
जी।
तो नाट्य शास्त्र में इसका नाम मृदंग है, ठीक है। उसके बाद में जब रत्नाकर लिखा गया है तो वहां पर तारंगदेव जी ने कहा है कि जिस वाद्य की मुनि ने चर्चा की है उसी का मैं आगे बढ़ा रहा हूँ। तो वो वाद्य वहां पर उन्होंने मर्दल नाम दिया है, मर्दल, मर्दल। फिर उसके बाद में हमें रिसेंटली जब भक्ति काल आता है, भक्ति काल, तो भक्ति काल में हमें जो है मृदंग की चर्चा भी मिलती है, उनके पदों में, उनकी मुरज के बारे में भी मालूम पड़ता है, और पखावज के बारे में। पख माने ये हिस्सा, आप देख पा रहे हैं मुझे? हेलो,
हाँ, देख, यहाँ सब दिख रहा है,
दिख रहा है ना? ये पख माने ये हिस्सा,
पक्ष, पक्ष, पक्ष आपका, हाँ,
वो वहाँ वो दूसरा अर्थ है, वो दूसरा एक संस्कृत में अर्थ अलग हो जाएगा। तो ब्रजभाषा में बता रहा हूँ, हमारे जो ब्रजभाषा में कहते हैं कि आदमी के पख कौन से हैं, पंख, पकुआ यानी पंख,
पंख से आपका मतलब है?
हाँ, तो हमारी आकृति भी जब बजाते हैं तो वो जैसे लाइक पंख, पंख इस तरीके से बजाते हैं ना। तो हमारे पकुआ हैं ये पख आवज, ये लोक नाम है पखावज। तो ये ब्रजभाषा में मिलता है। दूसरा संस्कृत में मिलता है हमें पक्षवाद्य, पक्ष माने साइड, दो साइड का वाद्य है ना ये, तो संस्कृत में हमें ये मिलता है। तो धीरे धीरे करके चेंज हुए हैं, और हम वहाँ 16 अक्षरों का नियम बताया गया है नाट्य शास्त्र में। फिर अब वो मिडिल का किस तरीके से यूज हुआ है, मुझे ज्यादा बारे में उसके बारे में हमें साक्ष्य नहीं मिलते हैं। लेकिन होते होते अब जब घराना व्यवस्था आई, क्योंकि परंपरा हमारे यहाँ पर, हमारे नाथद्वारा में परंपरा भी बोलते हैं, घराना भी बोलते हैं। तो हमारा जो है पारंपरिक ढंग से जो हमारी शब्दावली है, जो पटाक्षर है, वो 12 + 13 धा संयुक्त रूप से, तो
संयुक्त रूप से दोनों हाथों से बजता है, इसलिए धा।
हाँ,
और
तो
12 शब्द आप बजाते हैं।
हाँ, तो वह है ता, दी, थुन, ना, ते, त, क, त, ग, ग, न, धा संयुक्त रूप से। अब कुछ अक्षर ऐसे हैं कि जो
लेकिन पंडित जी आपको रोकना चाहती हूँ, आपने मेरे को एक बार बताया था कि आप झे और खर शब्द भी बजाते हैं।
अभी उसी पे मैं आ रहा हूँ। तो फिर उनके आश्रित जो बोल हैं, आश्रित सपोर्टिंग आश्रित जो बोल हैं वो है झ है, जो दोनों हाथों से बजाया जाता है, झ
हाथों से बजता है।
हाँ, खिर्र इज एक्चुअली वाइब्रेशन में करेंगे हम, जैसे दी, अभी इसको घर्षण करके निकालेंगे, खिर्र, दी, खिर्र, बीच की उंगली से निकालते हैं वो करके, घर्षण करके, तो खिर्र। और धिलांग, तो बहुत से शब्द फिर उसके साथ में जिसको कहते हैं आश्रित वर्ड, आश्रित पटाक्षर। तो मैन हमारे यहाँ पर तो 13 हैं, और घरानों में अलग अलग हैं। पागलदास जी घराने में 7 मानते हैं, पायलो क्योंकि पायलो ने सीखा है, और रामकिशोर दास से भी सीखा है। तो रामकिशोर दास जी, स्वर्गीय रामकिशोर दास, आपके अवधि घराने से थे, तो वो 7 मानते थे उनकी वो
वो
उसमें।
पागलदास
हम लोग
जी के शिष्य थे जी।
हाँ हाँ, तो हम लोग 13 मानते हैं। तो ये है कि मृदंग और पखावज, बहुत
नहीं
से
आप
लोग कहते
13
हैं
मानते
अलग।
हैं। एक मिनट डालचंद जी, मैं यहाँ पे रोकना चाहूँ, तो वो जो 7 मानते हैं वो कौन से हैं?
आई थिंक 4 अक्षर तो सब में ही है, 4
जी।
अक्षर, फोर वर्ड और 4 पटाक्षर, एनी पखावज आना, ता दी सुन ना, एंड ऑल्सो वहाँ मृदंगम में भी बोलते हैं, तत् जित सुन ना, वहाँ भी बोलते हैं,
मृदंगम में भी
वहाँ
बोलते हैं।
हाँ,
वाह।
मृदंगम में भी बोलते हैं। तो ये चार जो है हमारे यहाँ पर, ये तो प्रमुख है ही है। तो इसको ऐसा बताते हैं, ऐसी किंवदंती है कि ये ब्रह्मा के चारों मुखों से निकले हैं।
अच्छा।
तो किंवदंतियों का भी संगीत में बहुत महत्व होता है, हर कुछ चीज लिखी नहीं जा सकती। तो क्योंकि संगीत में ये चीज है कि बहुत सी चीजें पीढ़ी दर पीढ़ी चली आ रही हैं, पारंपरिक ढंग से चली आ रही है, मुंह जबानी भी चली आ रही है। तो लेकिन वो किंवदंती का महत्व तब है कि वो बात जो है हवा में ना उड़ाई जाए, उसका कुछ महत्व हो, यानी कि वो गले से उतर जाए। किंवदंतियों का भी महत्व है, लिखित में नहीं है बहुत सी चीजें। तो ये सच है कि हमारे यहाँ वो तादी सुनना तो प्राय सभी घरानों में बजाते हैं और उनका रचना भी होती है। और मृदंग पखावज जो है वो लोक शब्द
नहीं, आप अभी
ब्रजभाषा
डालचंद जी, आपने 4 बेसिक वर्ड बताए और वो 3 शब्द बताइए जो कि पागलदास जी के घराने में थे।
वो शायद मेरे अंदाज से ये पायलो बताएंगे, इन्होंने सीखा है उनसे पूछे जो है।
अच्छा।
ता दी थुन्ना ते ते घा का ऐसा कुछ है, घे क ऐसा कुछ है, मुझे याद नहीं आ रहा है, लेकिन उनके साथ है वो भी, धा भी उनका 8वां आ जाता है। तो ऐसा उनके अलग अलग, देखिए घराना व्यवस्था जब हमारे यहाँ पर आई है, निश्चित बात है कि अपनी अपनी विशेषताएं हैं और उनके अपने अपने निकालने के तरीके हैं, अपनी अपनी सोच है। लेकिन कुल देखते हैं, देखिए अब धा तो बदल नहीं सकता है, कुछ शब्द ऐसे हैं जो सभी घरानों में यूज होते हैं। तो उनकी अपनो अब उनको वर्तने का अंदाज है, जो अंदाज जिसका डिफरेंट है, वो डिफरेंट घराने बनते गए। और हमारे यहाँ विशेष करके हम लोग इसको परंपरा ही बोलते हैं, नाथद्वारा। और कुछ
नाथद्वारा घराना नहीं बोलते आप?
घराना भी बोलने लगे, अब बोलते भी हैं। लेकिन परंपरा को वो जी की सेवा पीढ़ी दर पीढ़ी उसको करते आए और पारंपरिक ढंग से करते आए। और क्योंकि गुरु पुरुषोत्तम दास जी ने और हमारे उनसे पहले के जो पखाव जी थे, उन्होंने उसको प्रसार किया। तो अब घराना का यहाँ अलग अलग बातें हैं, अलग अलग सोच है, क्योंकि ये आया है मेरे अंदाज से, मुझे जहाँ तक लगता है कि वो प्राचीन हमारी भारतीय संस्कृति के हिसाब से तो परंपरा ही चली आ रही। वेद में जब भी बोलते हैं कि साउथ की परंपरा है, ये कश्मीर की परंपरा है, ये बनारस की परंपरा है, वेद के अंदर में घराना व्यवस्था घराना बोलते हैं। अब हमारी तो वैदिक परंपरा है, सामवेद का उपवेद है गंधर्व वेद। तो वेदों नाम सामवेद, उसी भगवान श्री कृष्ण कहते हैं कि वेदों नाम सामवेदो, वेदों में सामवेद हूँ। और कृष्ण जो है वो जो है सौंदर्य का एंड है वहां पर। अब उसी में से वो संगीत है, जिस संगीत के अंदर में कृष्ण रहते हैं, वो भयानक तो हो नहीं सकता। अब जो हम देखते हैं कि सिर्फ वीररस का मतलब WWEF नहीं है, या जो है का भयानकता लिए हुए नहीं है, उसके अंदर में श्रृंगार भी होना चाहिए। अब देखिए रात में तो पखावजी बजाई जाती थी ना, रात को क्या मानते हैं आप? श्रृंगार रस मानते हैं ना, रासलीला। भगवान श्री कृष्ण जब रास करते थे तो उसकी एकम्पनी कौन करता था? पखावज करती थी, मृदंग करती थी। तो जब मृदंग उसकी संगत करती थी और अब उस रासलीला में हम वीर रस बजाएंगे तो वो बात तो नहीं आएगी ना। उसमें श्रृंगार भी और वीर रस भी था। कुछ रसें हैं जो संगीत में नहीं है, तो वो अपरोक्ष रूप में वो भी आ जाते हैं। जब हम बुरी तरह से बजाएंगे उसको तो भयानक अपने आप ही आ जाएगा उसके अंदर में। तो एक लिसनर को वो विभत्स मिल जाएगा, उसको लिसनर को।
पंडित जी पायलो का शायद कनेक्टिविटी प्रॉब्लम है, तो मुझे आप बताइए कि जो 2 बोल विशेष तौर से नाथद्वारा परंपरा आते हैं, धूमकेट और 3 नक,
जी
इन पर कुछ आप
हमारे यहाँ पर शायद एक उसने हमारे चर्चा जो कर रहे थे, उन्होंने पूछा था कि वो स्तुतियों के बारे में शायद।
हाँ,
तो हमारे घराने में नाथद्वारा घराने में पंचदेव स्तुति विशेषकर बजाई जाती है, जिसमें पखावज और कुछ शब्द लेके वो रचना की है। बहुत लंबी है, उसको बोलना तो शायद मेरे लिए मुश्किल है शायद। तो तक धग तिट, मैं सुनाई देता हूँ। तक धग तिट धग, दिस इज स्तुति परन, पंचदेव स्तुति नाथद्वारा। और तो
अच्छा, इसमें नाथद्वारा की है, नाथद्वारा की, और पखावजी नहीं बजाते हैं?
नहीं, अब बजाने लगे हैं। अब वो देखिए, अभी अब आप ये हम आजाद देश में हैं, कोई भी अपने को कह देता है कि ये हमारे घराने की है, ये हमारे घराने की है। तो लेकिन इसका प्रमाण है कि आपको मृदंग सागर में मिलेगी। और मृदंग सागर का पीरियड जो है वो लगभग 100 साल से ऊपर ही है। 100 साल पहले वो लिखी थी मृदंग सागर जो बुक है। तो हमें उसके अंदर में इस रचना को मिलता है, ये रचना लिखी हुई है।
ठीक है।
तो करीबन 100-150 वर्ष का तो इसका प्रमाण है ये मृदंग सावर में जो है। तो वहां है तक दग तिट दग न दग दिग दिन तदेन दिन धा तदा धट 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 दिन नग कत कत तिट कत तिट सा प्रत कत तिट तिट कत 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 तिट कत कत तिट सा कत कत जग न सन तदा गिन गिन कदा गिन गिन कदा गत कतुंग गदा धट पंच गणपति पंच पांडव नट नारायण नट नरे हर पुष्प चंदन मुकुट धक धक धणित दग नग धणित सा तुलंत्र मंत्र जपत गणपति पणित धड़ धड़ पणित सा गत नाद अपरंपार गत नित दे कलित नित धड़ा धड़क धम धड़ जग तड़ संग तड़ धड़ नग नग तिट तग नता दुर्ग गति नाथ नी दल असुर दल 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 मलित सोम सोम मन काट मा पथार डार तताई भुवन त्रिभुवन जय 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 जपत जय सुर सकल निरंतर जान गावत ताल दे 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 रंगन तक नग धन नग तेन नग धात नग दिन तक नग दिन धन नग दिन नग दिन धात नग दिन तक नग दिन धन नग दिन नग दिन धा। तो ये पंचदेव स्थिति है, इसमें वीर रस भी है, श्रृंगार रस भी है और भक्ति रस भी है। तो ये प्राचीन है। तो हमारे यहाँ पर क्योंकि ये साज जो है अध्यात्म से जुड़ा हुआ है, और इस करके नाथद्वारा में ये विशेष अध्यात्म से जुड़ा हुआ है, क्योंकि वहां ठाकुर की सेवा ही पखावज से की जाती है, मृदंग से की जाती है। तो आप अपने जो जी
मैंने आपसे पूछा धिननक और
हाँ धिननक। अब धिननक वही मैं बता रहा था कि धिननक, अब देखिए धिननक जो है श्रृंगार प्रधान है और वीर रस प्रधान है। धैत यू प्रोनाउंस धैत बोलने में आपको जोर पड़ेगा और धिननक श्रृंगार रस। तो ता सामान्य ता धिननक धत धिननक धत धत धिननक धत धत धिननक धत धिननक धत धिननक ये रचना है धिननक का बाद इसको बोलते हैं। इसी को हम सोलो में भी बजाते हैं, संगत में भी बजाते हैं, और वो हम इसमें दोनों रसों को लाने की कोशिश करते हैं। क्योंकि जब अगर मान लीजिए श्रृंगार प्रधान रचना है तो वहां हम धिननक जो बजाएंगे वो श्रृंगार प्रधान बजाएंगे, और जहाँ वीर रस प्रधान
कैसे करेंगे आप? वो कैसे करेंगे?
वो ऐसे करेंगे जैसे ता धिननक 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 धैत धिननक 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 धैत को थोड़ा कम रखेंगे।
अच्छा, बोलों पर फोर्स कम रखेंगे।
यस 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 यस। तो वो उसके हिसाब से, क्यों देखिए संगीत में काकू भेद बहुत मायने रखता है। अब वो काकू भेद जो है अगर हम गाते हैं तो वह काकू भेद है या भेद है, जब हम वादन करते हैं तो हस्त भेद। तो वो जो काकू भेद है हम इसको उसमें पखावज से करने की कोशिश करते हैं। मैंने थोड़ा सा इस पर काम किया है, और क्योंकि उसका मेन कारण ये है कि मैंने गाना सीखा है और गाने की थोड़ी सी मुझे नॉलेज है, तो मैं कोशिश करता रहता हूँ कि रचना के हिसाब से। और अब जैसे मान लीजिए गुरु पुरुषोत्तम दास जी ने एक रचना रची थी मेघपरण, तो उसके अंदर में वीर श्रृंगार रस भी है। तो जो नदी का जो कलकलाहट है वो श्रृंगार हमें प्रदान करती है, और जो मेघों की गर्जना है, अब देखिए इसको मेघनाद भी बोलते हैं पखावज को। इसका जो नाद है उसको मेघनाद, बारिश की जो बरसात का जो मेघ होता है उसका उस जैसा नाद। मैंने एक बार बताया था कि आप जब वर्षा की रचना गाते हैं तो उसके अंदर में सबसे सूटेबल साउंड होकर बहुत अच्छा लगता है। इसका मेन कारण ये है कि इसका साउंड उससे मैच करता है। इसका कतई ये मतलब नहीं है कि साहब वो धूम धड़ाक जो है मेघ का मतलब वो श्रृंगार प्रधान, यानी जो कानों को अच्छा लगे, उसमें संगीत होना चाहिए। वेगनाथ का मतलब ये नहीं है कि आप जो का बड़ी जोर से उसको बखाओ, उसको फाड़ दो, या जो का इतना जोर का साउंड हो, यानी कानों को जो अच्छा लगे, उसमें लगे कि हाँ ये है। तो उसमें एक रचना है, मैं सुना रहा था, घना नगारा जैसा रो त्रिस्त जाति गति। तो मेघ परण है हमारे नाथद्वारा की। घना नगारा जैसा रो काड़ी टिकार से चाहूं प्रकाश, मेघ बरस से चाहूं जल तल दल 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 असुर दल झरा या बारिश का बरसना। झरा 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 किरण कान गर्भ का नदी लास्ट में श्रृंगार रस है। तो मेन चीज ये है कि आपने कैसा किया है, आप कैसा सोचते हैं। तो आप अगर मान लीजिए कि जैसी दृष्टि वैसी सृष्टि कह सकते हैं। अब आप अगर मान लो हर चीज को वीर रस से ही सोच रहे हैं तो श्रृंगार रस कहाँ से आएगा? तो आपको वो दृष्टि बनानी पड़ेगी, वो सोच पैदा करनी पड़ेगी। और मैं जो है संगीत इस चीज को बहुत महत्व देता हूँ, व्यक्ति विशेष आपने कैसा किया है। जिन खोजा उन पाइया कह गए दास को कबीर। तो आपने कैसा खोजा है उसको, और आपने उस पर चिंतन मनन कैसा किया है। तो जननक हमारे यहाँ बजाया जाता है, धूमकेट का प्रयोग बहुत किया जाता है।
धूमकेट पर भी कुछ बताएं।
हाँ, धूमकेट की बहुत सी रचनाएं हैं। और जैसे शास्त्रों में मिलता है, हमें प्रबंध मिलते हैं। प्रबंध का ही आधुनिक रूप हम परण कह सकते हैं।
अच्छा,
तो अब देखिए धूमकेट धूमकेट तक तक आकट धूमकेट धूमकेट तक तक आकट धूमकेट तक तक आकट धूमकेट तक तक आकट तक तक आकट धूमकेट तक गरदा ता धूमकेट तक गरदा ता धूमकेट तक गरदा। ये धूमकेट की परण है। अब ये धूमकेट को हम कहाँ फंसा सकते हैं उसको, मतलब जिसको कहते हैं ना कि कोई हमने अंग चला, कोई छंद चला हमने। अब जैसे हमारे धा गे 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 गिना गे गिता गे गे, ये इसको हम कहते हैं थपिया का आवाज या झाला। आपके सजाते हैं, इसको हम झाला कहते हैं। तो इसके अंदर में जब झाला आप बजाते हैं तो उसके अंदर में आप तानों का पैच डालते हैं अंदर में। बीच बीच में आप वो लंगर डालते हैं उसका। तो हम पखावज में भी ऐसे करते हैं। धाग गदे गे गेंडा गे गेता गे गे धुमके धुमके गे गेदा गे गेदा गे गेदा गे गेदा गे गेदा गे धुमके धुमके गेदा गे गेदा गे गेदा गे। सो इसमें फीलिंग ये है कि वो जैसे बारिश की बूंदों की पड़ रही है। झाले का मतलब बारिश की बूंदों की झार, म्यूजिक वो जो चलती है उस तरीके की झार। तो वो आना चाहिए। झाले का मतलब ये नहीं है कि आपके जो है वो तैयारी में आप जो है साहब आप वो इतना ज्यादा वीर रस दिखा दो। उसमें वो रस है। तो उसके अंदर में कैसे हवा उसको बरसात को काटती है। धागे के गेगे के गेंडा गे गेता गे के तो एक माहौल क्रिएट करते हैं हम। तो ऐसे उसको धूमकेट को हम कहाँ किस तरीके से हम उसको यूज कर सकते हैं, ये यूज करने वाले पर निर्भर करता है। सॉरी।
तो पंडित जी, मेरा एक क्वेश्चन और है कि क्या जैसा आप बात कर रहे हैं, क्या आपकी परंपरा के दूसरे कलाकार भी इसी सब चीजों को बजाते हैं या इसी प्रकार की बात करते हैं?
वही वाली बात है, सब करते हैं, सब पारंपरिक ढंग से तो सभी करते हैं। लेकिन यहाँ मैं एक बात कहूंगा कि एक पिता की 4 औलाद होती हैं, चारों की सोच, चारों को करने का तरीका। हाँ, मूल तो जरूर वही होता है, मूल वही होता है पारंपरिक ढंग से, लेकिन सबकी सोच अपनी अपनी अलग होती है। आप जिन गुरु से सीखे हुए हैं, आप 4, 5 या 10 या 20 जितने भी शिष्य थे, सबकी अपनी अलग अलग तरीका है। हाँ, बेसिक वो जो गुरुओं ने बताया है, इसी को तो परंपरा या घराना व्यवस्था मानते हैं, इसी को वो जरूर रहेगा मौजूद, लेकिन सोच अपनी डालनी पड़ती है, अपने तरीके से होती है।
Dhanyavad Panditji, or in the absence of Paolo, I think you answered all my questions. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, Paolo here.
I'm just gone. Yes, I'm just back. My
Okay.
line was not working.
Paolo, first of congratulations and my blessing. Okay.
Oh, thank you very much.
Paolo, in your absence, Mr. Pandit Dalchandji has explained and given answers of all my queries. And in the meanwhile, he spoken in his spoken words, Padhantu.
Yes, something I could listen.
For the showcase of his parampara, and he also told me about the Dhumkit and bowls. If you want to highlight something about these bowls, then it's fine.
Something. No, I was before this problem about my connection started. You were saying something about the balls in general. In texts, and there is a variety. There are varieties of balls.
Which are nowadays.
Yes, and that is, I think, interesting because now, if we go in texts, there are a number of these balls which are no more strokes, or are there also behind? I mean, not only balls but strokes, and that is quite interesting. And it again shows the movement of the process of changing, continuous change of these things. To the particular balls, there are various opinions. There are some musicians who, like, for instance, Baldeep Singh maintains that Dinanaka are also used in their in his Karana. And various, yes, in a lot of ways.
Dr. Paolo, I have to interrupt in this very, very interesting discussion because I have to see our guest already 15-20 minutes ahead of our closing schedule, and I'm sure they must be having some commitment and other things. So I know this is a very wonderful or very interesting interaction and discussion, and I'm sure everybody must have enjoyed it. And we may not have much interaction now with the among the panelists, but last thing which I want to, there is only one question which I want to take up before we close. That is Gopal Krishnan. Basically, he has raised a question. Have you a question in the Q&A? That is your experience with the Mezabo and Pakhavaj. Basically, he wants to know your experiences in these two. So would like to say something on this, or?
Yes, my experience with Mirabu is not practical, but only, I mean, as a witness, I've gone there, I've attended hundreds of performances of Kutiatam and Nangyarkutu, but I've recorded the entire repertoire of the, thanks to the collaboration of Mirabu player, Sajit Kumar, Margi Sajit Kumar. And since, thanks to my experience in Mridanga and Pakhavaj, I've analyzed also the repertoire of, particularly, I've also already written an article, it's going to be published, on the ritual repertoire, because there is a Purapad is the first section of Kutiatam performance. That is the ritual part. And compositions in this part of repertoire are extremely interesting, and there are also some aspects which are relating to with Pakhavaj, but they are anyway different approaches, I have to say. So I think that in this case, the Mirabu is one of the examples in which, as I argue in the book, the name has been attributed to an instrument because of its importance, of the importance of the name Mridanga. And of course, the Miravu is an extremely important instrument in Kerala tradition, and it's a wonderful instrument. But the association, I think, is more in this, because the repertoire of this instrument is particularly associated with the theater, with drama. That is something that in ancient, although ancient Mridanga was connected, maybe in this way we can find a connection between the instruments, but with contemporary, not much, you can say.
Thank you, Dr. Paolo, and thank you, Professor Sunira Kasliwal. You made it so interesting. मुझे याद है जब मैंने डालचंद जी से बात की तो ही वॉज हेजिटेंट कि मैं क्या बोलूंगा, लेकिन पंडित जी आपने इस प्रोग्राम में एक नया ही इंटरटेनमेंट और इंटरेक्शन, क्योंकि प्रैक्टिकली जो बुक के कंटेंट्स को आपने सामने नहीं आएंगे, तो आई थिंक आपने बहुत खूबसूरत तरीके से हमें उस चीज से रूबरू कराया, और आपकी प्रेजेंस से, परंपरा से, क्योंकि सही मायनों में किसी भी बुक का, किसी भी कंटेंट की वैल्यू तभी है जब हम उसकी एक्चुअल कंटेंट्स को रिलेट कर सकें अपनी डे टू डे लाइफ से, अपने कल्चर से, अपने ट्रेडिशन से। तो आप जैसे आर्टिस्ट बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण है, और आपने आके इस प्रोग्राम को बहुत ही इंटरेस्टिंग, तो सबसे पहले तो मैं आपको धन्यवाद करना चाहूंगा, और चाहूंगा कभी मौका मिला तो हम आईजीएन से आपको परफॉर्मेंस के लिए भी इनवाइट करेंगे।
जब आप इनका परफॉर्मेंस करेंगे तब आप देखेंगे। वैसे आप लोगों ने उनकी एक सीडी प्रकाशित की है, जो कि आपके यहाँ पर है
इंटरव्यू के तौर पे। हाँ
जी जी जी। तो उसके अंदर
थैंक यू पंडित डालचंद जी, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आपका, और बहुत अच्छा
सभी को
लगा
बहुत
आप जुड़े।
धन्यवाद आप सभी को धन्यवाद, और जो हमारे विदेश से हैं उनको भी बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। थैंक यू।
Also, thank you very much, Mr. Gaur, for joining me in this session, beautiful session. And Mr. Paolo, I again congratulate you for your contribution on Pakhavaj in our repertoire.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sunira. And thank you, Professor Richard. Thank you, Professor Kippen, for wonderful views, and you made it really interacting. This program has been recorded and also will be also available on our IGNCA YouTube channel. So in future, you can recommend or refer somebody to your students and other people to listen it. And last but not least, Dr. Paolo, thank you very much for writing such a wonderful book, and then also agreeing to have discussion on this book today. We really honored to have this program, and I'm sure our all participants have enjoyed. I still see 25 participants still with us today in almost 2 hours this program. So thank you all participants, and we look forward to meeting you again in some other program. And with these words, I close this program, and thank you. बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Namaskar. Namaskar.
Thank you.
Namaskar.
Jasbir ji, you can close the program now.
Okay, sir.